Mr. Speaker, the member across the way is once again continuing the proud Liberal tradition of spreading misinformation. I have never denied anything about the horrors that occurred in residential schools. But the Liberals are just trying to once again distract from their horrible record on the economy of doubling the national debt, of increasing violent crime by more than 50% over the past 10 years, and by leaving this country weaker and more vulnerable to intimidation and terrorists from the United States.
There will be time remaining in questions and comments after a question period, 3.5 minutes remaining. Statements by members, déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise with deep sorrow to honour Harsimrat Randhawa, a bright, kind and ambitious 21-year-old Mohawk college student from India. On April 17, 2025, Harsimrat's life was tragically cut short by a senseless act of violence. She was an innocent bystander taken from us while waiting for a bus on her way to work. In our grief, our community came together to mourn, to support one another, and remember Harsimrat. That strength in community reflects the very core of what Canada stands for. As a father, I can only begin to imagine the grief that her family is enduring. The heartbreak of sending their child across the world to pursue her dreams, only to receive the devastating news that she had been killed. Harsimrat's story is a stark reminder that public safety must be a priority. Harsimrat Randhawa was loved and will be remembered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
Mr. Speaker, it is an honour to rise as the representative for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies, a new riding for this 45th Parliament. I first wish to thank the voters, the volunteers, and their families who placed their trust in me. Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies is a diverse riding, stretching from the Great Continental Divide at the BC Alberta through the Shuswap Highlands to the ranching grasslands of Kamloops. It includes Craigellachie, where the last spike of the Canadian Pacific Railway was driven to unite Canada. It is home to 3 national parks and spans headwater tributaries of the massive Columbia and Fraser rivers. But it is the people of this majestic riding that make it truly spectacular. It is the agriculturalists and artisans, the mountaineers and miners, the railroaders and retirees, all of the people of the Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies that hold this seat in this House, and I pledge to do my best to ensure they are well represented.
The honourable member for Les Pays d'en Haut. Hello, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. Allow me, as I rise for the first time in this House of Commons, to tell you a great story from Les Pays d'en Haut. I stand before you and my honourable colleagues as the first federal member in the history of this new riding, and I'm very proud. If I have this incredible privilege, it's thanks to the hard work of my wife Julie, my kids Emma and William, all of my incredible team of volunteers who worked hard in my riding. Mr. Speaker, the riding of Les Pays d'en Haut is made up of mountains, lakes, trails, forests, and I will defend and protect them. And it's important for me to thank the people of Moray Heights who gave me their confidence as mayor for the last 16 years, and I'm certain that I will be able to continue to defend all members of the riding of Pays d'en Haut. Thank you.
Member for Niagara West.
Mr. Speaker, this is my first time rising in the House of Commons after a hard-fought election. I wholeheartedly thank the constituents of Niagara West for putting their trust in me for the 8th consecutive time. But I couldn't have done any of this without the hard work and the dedication of our excellent campaign team who got the job done. We had dozens and dozens of extraordinary volunteers. Thank you for all the work you did on our campaign. Rain or shine, cold or hot, they never gave up, even on those chilly, windy days, courtesy of our Great Lake, Ontario. Sign crews, door knockers, and many others, the best team in Canada. I will always remember and appreciate it. I would also like to thank my friends and family, my kids and my staff, but the biggest thank you goes to my wife, Rebecca. Rebecca is an amazing woman, and I can assure you she has lots of patience. Thank you, Rebecca, for standing as a team as we once again take this journey together. And now, It's time to get back to hard work. Canada's need us in these challenging times. Conservatives are here to work tirelessly on their behalf, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the people of Bourassa for the great honour of representing them here in the House of Commons. It's a huge honour, and I also want to send a message to my colleagues. Despite our differences, we all share the same commitment to serve with integrity, to listen, and to serve with humility as we represent the voice of those who put us here. Let's make this Parliament a moment of progress and respect for all Canadians. We are here to bring about change despite any challenge that we face. Every word that will be spoken here in this House can change lives. I will share with my colleagues a quote from Nelson Mandela, who said, "Everything seems impossible until it's done. So let's make this Parliament a place where the impossible can be done."
The Honourable Member for Prince Albert.
Before I begin, I'd like to thank the residents of the riding of Prince Albert for my re-election, me as their Member of Parliament. As members of this House are aware, my home province of Saskatchewan is experiencing one of the worst starts to the wildfire season on record. More than 500,000 hectares have been burned, and as of Sunday afternoon, 20 communities remained under evacuation orders. 15 active wildfires are forcing residents from communities such as Timber Bay, Hall Lake, Pelican Narrows to flee their homes. Premier Scott Moe recently spoke about the value of developing a national investment strategy, one where critical resources like air tankers can be owned by the country and shared across jurisdictions to meet the surge capacity when and where needed. It is about protecting our communities, our forests, and our future. Thank you to the firefighters and emergency personnel who are putting themselves at great risk to protect our communities. And please, let us all pray for rain.
The Honourable Member for Cardigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having spent most of my life as a dairy farmer in eastern Prince Edward Island, I'd like to take this opportunity to raise a glass to all the dairy farmers across this nation. As you may know, World Milk Day was June 1st. It's a day celebrated around the world. It highlights the nutritional value of milk and recognizes the hard work of our dairy farmers, the women and men who work so hard every day to provide safe and nutritious milk to Canadians. With over 9,000 Canadian dairy farms, the dairy sector supports over 270,000 full-time jobs in communities in every province across this country. A healthy, vibrant dairy sector brings stability to both rural and urban communities while supporting the vitality of its related industries. I'm proud to be a Canadian dairy farmer, to be the son of a dairy farmer, the father of another, and to coin a phrase from the members opposite, I come from boots, not suits. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' throne speech was 2,500 words, yet there wasn't one mention of the opioid crisis or the unprecedented crime wave caused by their policies. Last week in my hometown of Williams Lake, the City Council passed a motion to declare a state of emergency in response to the rising rates of vandalism, open drug use, arson, theft, overdose, and public indecency. Businesses can't even secure the mandatory insurance due to the high rates of vandalism. Meanwhile, the city is experiencing between 20 and 30 overdoses per day. City Councillor Scott Nelson said this: "The rates of crime, vandalism, drugs, and overdoses have skyrocketed and it's out of control. Williams Lake, a population of 10,000, 6 prolific offenders commit over 98% of the crime. When they're in jail, the crime rate goes down. When they're out, it skyrockets. This new government must finally take the fentanyl crisis seriously. Get tough on crime, lock up repeat offenders, and keep our communities safe."
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. In New France in 1724, 4 brothers under the age of 20, François, Jacques, Jean, and Pierre Archambault, settled on the banks of the Richelieu River on land that was then part of the Contrecoeur Seigneurie. They were joined by other families until they were numerous enough in 1750 to build their own church. After the deportation of 1755, they welcomed many refugees who settled in what is now known as the Rang de l'Acadie. And on November 23, 1837, thanks to reinforcements from Saint-Antoine, the Patriotes won the victory at Saint-Denis, and among them was a certain Georges-Étienne Cartier, who later changed allegiance. Today, Saint-Antoine has retained all of its charm and all of its history, and my ancestor, François Guertin, could never have imagined as he cleared his land that 300 years later, one of his descendants would be in Parliament to celebrate the 275th anniversary of his village, one of those beautiful villages on earth. Happy 275th anniversary to all the men and women of Saint-Antoine.
Member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, I am honoured, as are my colleagues, to rise in the House for the 45th Parliament to say thank you to the constituents of Humber River Black Creek for giving me the great opportunity and privilege of representing them for the 10th time here in Ottawa. I want to thank my tireless husband Sam, my children Kathy, Deanna and Sam for their continued support. A special thanks to my son-in-law Graziano for his immense support during the election, and daughter-in-law Claudia and the grandchildren. My staff, Amy, Albert, Abby, Stephanie, Zanya, for their dedication to helping the residents of Humber River Black Creek every day. I would not have been elected and re-elected without the tireless efforts of the many volunteers during the campaign. To name a few, Terrell, Chris, Juan, Marina, Chris, Dave, Miss Emma, and Marianne. There are many more I would like to acknowledge, however my time is unfortunately limited. I will continue to honor my oath to serve our community of Humber River Black Creek, dedication and integrity as we work together to build a better Canada. Thank you.
Full member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin, Nickel Belt.
Mr. Speaker, last week this Liberal government tabled a $486 billion spending bill. The Prime Minister promised during the election that he would govern Canada with a new fiscal discipline. Well, Mr. Speaker, it seems like we have a case of meet the new boss just as the same as the old boss. While many people in Northern Ontario struggle to make ends meet with the ever-increasing costs of everyday life, the Liberals don't get it. They seem to talk a good game of fiscal restraint, but talk is cheap, unlike the cost of living. The Prime Minister's first bill does nothing to ease the burden of skyrocketing mortgage payments, groceries, and energy. Instead, it increases government spending by 8%, including a 36% increase for consultants. When will the Liberals put the interests of everyday Canadians ahead of their well-connected insiders in Ottawa?
The honourable member for Scarborough, Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, thank you to the people of Scarborough, Agincourt for placing their trust in me a fourth time. And gratitude to the many volunteers, supporters, campaign team, and my family who all worked so hard to allow me to continue to be a voice in Ottawa and also in the riding. I am here for you and because of you. I want to welcome all the new constituents who have joined Scarborough Agincourt because of the federal electoral boundary changes. I will focus on affordability, tariff concerns, and community safety, which is what I heard at the doors. We are truly a vibrant community, which is reflected in our many places of worship, small businesses, and excellent restaurants. I am so very proud to represent one of the most culturally diverse ridings in Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
The Prime Minister has repeatedly refused to be transparent about his financial holdings. Instead of coming clean about his financial interests, he dumped his assets into a blind trust, exposing a loophole in Canada's financial disclosure laws. Through this scheme, he is keeping his financial interests a secret from Canadians in order to escape accountability. This follows a pattern of shady actions. Prior to becoming Prime Minister, he held two multi-billion-dollar funds in offshore tax havens so his company, Brookfield, could avoid paying Canadian taxes. After tabling a spending bill asking for $500 billion, Canadians deserve to know if the Prime Minister is using that spending to boost his own investment portfolio. The Prime Minister must tell Canadians what assets he held when he entered public office and if those assets were held in offshore tax havens to avoid paying Canadian taxes.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with great humility that I accept this second mandate. The people of Rivière-du-Mille-Îles offered me that in the last election, and I truly appreciate it. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. Mr. Speaker, it's so... I'm sorry. To all my colleagues, any seat is a very important seat in this House of Commons, believe me. And I'll say it to all new members. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the support of my partner, my kids, my family, and my friends. And especially without the support of my volunteers, Mr. Speaker. It's been such a long time, and they worked so hard. I'm sorry to the honourable member, but...
The honourable member for Niagara South.
Mr. Speaker, after the lost Liberal decade, Canadians can no longer afford the housing hell created by these Liberals. According to one homeless report in the Niagara region, chronic homelessness is up 41%. The problem is only getting worse, and I can see the evidence in every community in my riding. According to one home building association, housing starts are decelerating rapidly, and a massive supply deficit is beginning to take place. Meanwhile, existing homeowners are also struggling. According to Equifax, homeowners experiencing a 6% increase in people unable to make a mortgage payment. Yes. And the 90-day plus mortgage delinquency is increased by 71% across Ontario.
Shame.
The Liberal plan will create a second housing bureaucracy and will do nothing to build more homes. Canadians want action. Conservatives will continue to support a real plan that will lower taxes and make life more affordable and bring home the dream of home ownership.
The honourable member for Cape Breton, Canso, Antigonish.
Mr. Speaker, as I rise for the first time of Member of Parliament for Cape Breton, Canso, Antigonish, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the constituents of our riding for putting their trust in me as their representative. And to my campaign team, this journey would not have been possible without you. Mr. Speaker, June is National Indigenous History Month in Canada. It is a month to celebrate Indigenous culture. It is a time to reflect on our shared history, and it is a time to acknowledge the vast contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. National Indigenous History Month is also an opportunity to embrace Indigenous events in our communities, hear the beautiful languages, and support the work of Indigenous arts and crafts. I encourage all Canadians to get involved with National Indigenous History Month this June. Walaliek, Miigwech, Marci, Nokamik.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
The Prime Minister ran on elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. and promising this would generate $20 billion in revenue. It turns out it was actually elbows down, and the Prime Minister broke his promise and secretly cancelled those tariffs. Now Trump is threatening 50% tariffs on Canadian steel, which will devastate Canada's steel industry and put thousands of steel workers out of their jobs. Can the Prime Minister look steel workers in the eye, tell them it wasn't actually elbows down, and how much money his tariffs will actually generate?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
In this House and the Prime Minister, we will fight, Mr. Speaker, against these unjustified and illegal tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, Mr. Speaker. We're going to protect our workers and our industry, and the Minister of Industry already spoke about that over the weekend. And we're going to build a strong Canada, Mr. Speaker. We're going to build a Canada of tomorrow, a confident Canada, a prosperous Canada, a Canada that we can all be proud, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
It doesn't matter which Liberal stands up to answer a question in this Parliament or last Parliament. They just actually never answer a question, Mr. Speaker. And it's not complicated. Elbows Up was dollar for dollar tariffs. Has the Prime Minister already broken his promise to steelworkers, or was Elbows Up simply just fake news? And now we're facing the Trump tariffs, and steelworkers from coast to coast to coast are in serious jeopardy of losing their jobs. It's a simple question. How much money from these quote-unquote elbows up tariffs have they generated?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
There's a lot of anxiety across the country, particularly when it comes to the steel and aluminum sectors. That's why over the weekend I've been in contact with industry leaders as well as union leaders, and we will continue to make sure that we protect their jobs. In order to be in solution mode, Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that Canadian steel and aluminum is used in our major infrastructure projects. That is why steel workers have said over the weekend, at a time where our steel and aluminum sectors are being hit by massive U.S. tariffs, this is the kind of leadership we've been demanding, and it has delivered.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
To be clear, the Prime Minister promised elbows up against U.S. tariffs. He promised dollar for dollar counter tariffs. He promised it would generate $20 billion in revenue, but he broke those promises. He secretly dropped counter tariffs to effectively zero. He stopped fighting back against President Trump pretty early on, and now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, a direct attack against our workers, their livelihoods, and the Canadian economy. So if the Prime Minister really is elbows up, if he's really fighting back, can he tell our steelworkers how many dollars have been collected in counter tariff revenue from the U.S.? How many dollars? What's the number, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague and congratulate her for the fact that she will be now my critic. So good news, looking forward to working with her. Indeed, the comments coming out of the White House are preoccupying. That being said, no executive order has been signed yet. So we take these comments very seriously, but we are working on all scenarios. That's why the Prime Minister is in Saskatoon meeting with the premiers of the provinces and territories, and that's also why we will make sure that we execute our plan, fight, protect, and build.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
I didn't hear a dollar amount on revenue from those counter tariffs, so we can assume it's effectively zero. And if the steel tariffs weren't bad enough, the Prime Minister is determined to keep the industrial carbon tax on our steel production, driving up the cost of steel production here at home, which perhaps is really no surprise given the Prime Minister said he claimed that Canadians don't even use that much steel, as if we don't use dishwashers and fridges and cars and pots and pans and baby strollers and housing infrastructure, all of which are made with steel, Mr. Speaker. So how can the Prime Minister claim to be elbows up for workers and fighting for affordability while keeping a punishing carbon tax on our Canadian steel producers?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
We'll take no lesson from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. We have put in place as a country, as a nation, the largest counter tariff in our nation history, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers in the steel industry, in the aluminum industry, in the forestry sector, in all the sectors of our economy, to defend our workers and our industry, Mr. Speaker. We should all in this room, in this House, stand proudly to defend Canadian workers, defend Canadian industry, and build Canada strong. That's Canadian, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, aluminum workers in Saguenay are very concerned. The Prime Minister promised Canadians that he would stand up to Americans and their tariffs. And now Mr. Trump is threatening to slap once again a 50% tariff on aluminum. Meanwhile, the Liberal government has reduced tariffs on American products to almost nothing. But the Prime Minister told us he would collect $2 billion. Can Saguenay workers know how much the Prime Minister has collected in counter tariffs to date? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Listen, I understand the anxiety that my colleague has expressed, and this is throughout the aluminum sector, and that's why over the weekend I went to the Aluminum Summit Sunday evening in Montreal to meet with not only industry leaders, but also to talk with the union leaders. We're going to continue to support our aluminum sector in Quebec, and we're going to use aluminum and Quebec steel and Canadian steel in our infrastructure projects. We're going to create jobs, we're going to protect these workers, and we're going to be able able to defend our country against this injustice from the White House. The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Lafiore. Mr. Speaker, many Canadians voted for this Prime Minister thinking he would stand up to Mr. Trump. But it didn't take long for him to remove the counter-tariffs on American products. Then he said he would be more fiscally responsible, but he presented spending forecasts that even outstripped those of his predecessor. He talks like a conservative, but governs like Justin Trudeau. He says one thing and then does another. When will this Prime Minister stop talking out of both sides of his mouth? The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue. I'm surprised to hear my colleagues' comments. He should be proud that our PM standing up to the President. We did not capitulate. We're standing up to defend workers in this industry. We know how important the aluminum industry is in Quebec. We know the expertise of our workers, and the best aluminum in the world is produced in Canada and Quebec, and we're going to continue to defend this industry and our workers and build a strong country together. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals got elected by promising that Trump's tariff threats would be their top priority. And yet, it's not the new tariff threats on aluminum and steel that are being discussed today in Saskatoon between the premiers. No, the priority being discussed is forcing Quebec to accept a dirty oil pipeline from the West. Quebecers voted for a government that would protect them from Donald Trump. They did not vote for pipelines. Are the Liberals going to get their priorities straight? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, obviously Quebecers are very concerned by the tariff war from the U.S., and that's why they elected us with 44 Quebec MPs. This is the first time since '81, and we are going to be here to defend jobs and workers in the aluminum sector because we know that these tariff threats are against this sector. So we're going to work with the member from Lac-Saint-Jean and Bécancour, etc. But fundamentally, we're going to stand up tall to protect our jobs. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, even before meeting with Quebec and the provinces today, the Prime Minister met with business leaders yesterday. Not representatives from the steel and aluminum industries to discuss Trump's new tariff threats. No, he met with CEOs from the fossil fuel sector. Oil companies first, Quebec and the provinces a close second. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was not elected to serve oil companies. He was elected to protect Quebec's economy from Donald Trump's threats. How come these oil companies are coming first? The Honourable Minister of Industry. I think the Bloc needs to understand that the role of the PM is to talk to everyone, whether it's in the aluminum sector or in steel or clean energy or traditional energy. That's the job of the Prime Minister. That's something that the Bloc will never understand. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, what's fundamental is right now we want to build. We're going to invest in major infrastructure projects. And one of the infrastructure projects for the Quebec that is fundamental is the high-speed train from Windsor to Quebec City, something that the Bloc should support. The honourable member for Jonquière. While the prairies are burning, the premiers are in Saskatoon talking about dirty oil pipelines and abandoning environmental assessments. That's Canadian identity today, Mr. Speaker. A Liberal Prime Minister who talks to oil companies before talking to his provincial counterparts. Provinces that isolate Quebec to force it to accept a pipeline. All these people keep telling us that it's a matter of Canadian unity and of national interest. Does the Minister of Canadian Identity also believe that Canadian unity and the national interests mean building pipelines while the prairies burn? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, you know what's the national interest? That's job creation and protecting jobs. And that's what people in all ridings where the Bloc are active in, who's able to deliver? There's just one party, and that's the Liberal Party. And there's only one government that can protect and create jobs, and that's us. We're going to do this by working with the Quebec government, of course, and traveling with the provinces. But it's fundamental in this tariff war to fight against this White House rhetoric and to create jobs at the same time.
Honourable member for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. that would collect $20 billion. The Prime Minister broke that promise, giving Canadians elbows down when he dropped the tariffs on the U.S. to effectively zero. Now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, attacking Canadian workers, their jobs, their livelihoods, and our industry. Can the Prime Minister tell our steel workers how much has been collected from tariffs on the U.S.?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
The member on the other side is misinformed, but let's talk about the great things we've been doing for Canadians lately. Mr. Speaker, last week we introduced as the first thing in this House a tax reduction for the middle class, Mr. Speaker. 22 million Canadians will benefit from that measure, Mr. Speaker. Not only we did that, but we also make sure that we remove the GST for first-time home buyers on their first house up to $1 million, Mr. Speaker. Those are measures that makes a difference in the life of Canadians. Those are measures that makes a difference in every region of Canada. Those are measures that build a Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North.
So did you hear that, steel workers in Hamilton? Not a number in that arrogant answer. Well, I don't think that's surprising, given that this is a government whose Prime Minister believes that Canadians don't actually use steel in their daily lives. But for workers and businesses in my community of Hamilton who are looking for the support that might have come from the revenue of those counter tariffs, they're being left empty-handed, and they are worried about their future. So let me ask again, if the Liberals are truly fighting back, can they tell us how much has been collected from tariffs? How much? Just a number.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, we know that there's a lot of anxiety across the country in the steel and aluminum sector, particularly in Hamilton. That's why I was in contact with the CEO of ArcelorMittal, the FASCO, over the weekend, talking to the head also of the Canadian steelworkers, making sure that our MPs also from Hamilton are really on board and as they're fighting for the jobs in their own communities. Mr. Speaker, this rhetoric coming out of the White House is extremely preoccupying, but meanwhile, no executive order has been signed. That's why we'll continue to fight with counter tariffs to protect our workers and to make sure that we build national projects.
The honourable member for New Tecumseh, Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, unemployment is up 7%. Youth unemployment is 14%. Canadians can't find work, and the burden of government red tape is making things even worse. Small businesses spend 32 working days every year wrapped up in excessive regulations. It's no wonder they can't afford to hire or innovate. Will the Liberals finally cut the red tape, strangling our economy so businesses can hire and Canadians can find a job?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs for Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, this government is focused on making sure that employers have the quality, skilled talent that they need to grow their small, medium-sized businesses and ensure that corporations across this country have the kind of innovation and talent that they are all asking for. So I would recommend that that member listen to the employers and check in with the employers in his riding who are talking about the need for more talent. We'll be there, Mr. Speaker, for every Canadian that wants to ensure they can to get a great job.
The honourable member for New Tecumseh, Gwillimbury.
It's been 10 years, and I have been listening to Canadians, and the minister should listen to Canadians who can't find a job. There are fewer new entrepreneurs than ever. Productivity and growth are down. Forget the scissors, forget the pruners, hum them. We need a chainsaw to cut through all this red tape. It's time to clear a path for Canadians to be successful and to hire. So why do the Liberals keep choking Canadian workers and businesses with their red tape?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister often says, no one can do to Canada the kind of bad things to be against the good things that Canadians can do for themselves. The Prime Minister and ministers are in Saskatoon today, doing the hard work of removing red tape in the form of internal trade barriers so we can have one Canadian economy and not 13 Canadian economies. This will lower prices up to 15%, productivity up to 7%, and add $200 billion to the economy, Mr. Speaker. That's eliminating red tape. That's standing up for Canada.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. and claimed he would collect $20 billion. The Prime Minister broke down that promise, giving Canadian steel and auto workers an elbow in the ribs when he dropped tariffs on the U.S. to effectively zero. Now President Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, attacking Canadian workers, their jobs, their livelihoods, and our industry. Can the Prime Minister tell us how much he has actually collected from tariffs, and so far, how is he going to help secure jobs in Windsor?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Only we will make sure that Canadian steel and aluminum is in our major projects, but we will make sure that all the investments we're putting in defense are to create jobs, which will have an impact on the steel and aluminum sector. And that is why the United Steelworkers mentioned at a time where our steel and aluminum sectors are being hit by massive U.S. tariffs, this is the kind of leadership we've been demanding, and that has been delivered by this government. Thank you.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Prime Minister promised elbows up. He promised dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S., and he promised he would collect $20 billion in revenue. But in reality, he quietly dropped the tariffs on the U.S., practically to zero. And now Donald Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%. This will destroy our industry and punish our workers. Since the Canadian tax revenue was supposed to support Canadian steel workers, can the Prime Minister tell us how much has he collected so far for jobs in Oxford? And just give us just the number.
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
Speaker, I would like to see in this House the same movement we've seen with steel workers in the industry, Mr. Speaker. This is a nation where we need to come together as a nation. This is a moment to fight together these unjustified tariffs, Mr. Speaker. This is a time to make sure we protect our industry and our workers. This is a time where we need to build this country, like the Prime Minister is doing with the premiers today in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker. I just wish in this House that everyone would stand up to defend our industry, defend our workers, and build Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Surprise, surprise, they can't give us a number. And now Trump's 50% tariffs on steel will shut down our plants across our country. Thousands of jobs are on the line. Layoffs have already started in Oxford. There is anxiety on our floor shops and our kitchen tables. And it's not just Trump's tariffs that are killing jobs, it's also the Liberal industrial carbon tax. That's right. If the Prime Minister can't get a deal with Trump on tariffs, will at least give our workers a fighting chance. Remove the Liberal industrial carbon tax today.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, we know that we need to make sure that we fight back with strong counter tariffs against this rhetoric coming out of the White House. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? Our strategy has been working. There's only 2 countries on earth that have put counter tariffs against tariffs by the Americans, China and us. And by the way, today the U.S. Chamber of Commerce said that this threat of 50% tariffs in the steel and aluminum sector was completely unacceptable. We will work with our allies within the American society, and we will make sure that we fight back.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The elections have once again proven that Indigenous people are treated as second-class citizens federally. In Abitibi Bay James Nunavut, the Inuit were unable to vote. It has been reported that in at least 6 communities, polling station opening hours were not respected. In Avujivik, the office was never even opened. No one was able to vote there. If this had happened in Toronto, it would have been a scandal. But in the North, it's tolerated. Does the Minister to Indigenous Services think it's normal that the Inuit were denied their right to vote in this way? The Honourable Government House Leader. Elections Canada is an independent agency, and in fact, one of the best in the world. And it protects our democracy very securely and efficiently. If there are issues in terms of the election and how they were conducted, well, questions should be brought to them. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, Elections Canada has taken away the Inuits' right to vote, the most fundamental right in a democracy. This is completely unacceptable, yet it is accepted. No one's talking about it. We cannot condone this harm caused to the Inuit by Elections Canada, whether it's through incompetence or negligence. What will the minister do to ensure that Elections Canada reveals everything that happened, and what measures will they take to ensure that this never happens again in their riding or elsewhere? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, like the member knows full well, if there are issues, these concerns can be brought, as all Canadians can do. They can bring their concerns to Elections Canada, and I'm sure that this independent agency, which is the pride of our country, will try to answer these questions. And the right to vote is obviously the most fundamental right for Canadians, and we fight for it every day here in the House. But Elections Canada is in charge of conducting our elections. They do a good job, and they will be answering these questions.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister introduced his first spending bill. The Liberals increased spending by 8% after promising to keep it below 2%. Spending on consultants alone increased by more than 36%. To an unprecedented $26.1 billion. Now, every Canadian household has to pay $1,400 per year in taxes just to pay for well-connected Liberal insiders. Liberal spending drives inflation. When will they spend responsibly to ensure Canadians and residents of Kitchener Centre never have to decide between filling the refrigerator or putting...
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, this new government is making sure that spending is being carefully managed and focused on our most pressing priorities. In 2023 and 24, departments started reducing spending on professional and travel services by $500 million. We will continue to review our spending to make sure that we're being efficient, effective, and focused. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, on the very day the Prime Minister pledged a 2% spending cap, his government unveiled a bill that surges spending by 8%, shattering that promise. Consultant fees skyrocketed by 36% after they promised to cut them, costing Canadian families $1,400 in additional taxes. While households are forced to manage their budgets, this Liberal government acts unchecked, putting jobs at risk. After 10 years of Liberal failures, why does the Prime Minister think it's okay to spend even more money on government insiders and lobbyists?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I just talked about our spending reduction, but also let's talk about investment in the mains. It includes important funding to support dental care, the Canadian Forces, and border services. This new government is investing in Canadians to build Canada strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, a new Prime Minister, but nothing has changed. He's proposing the same spending that will cause the same painful consequences for Canadians. People in the auto industry in Windsor, Ontario, are worried about losing their homes if they are laid off. The reasons of Liberal spending are missed mortgage payments and skyrocketing losses, job losses. How is a Liberal government asking to spend $500 billion causing further inflation without a budget plan?
L'Honorable Ministre des Finances et du Revenu National.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome my colleague to this House, but she should know that we made generational investment in Windsor, Mr. Speaker, in the outdoor sector. She should be celebrating the Liberal government. She should be standing up to say thanks to this government, the worker, the industry, people in Windsor can see a future, Mr. Speaker. The people in Windsor know that we have their back. They know that we're going to fight for them. We're going to fight for the industry. We're going to fight for the auto workers. We're going to build Canada strong together, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Richmond.
The honourable member for Richmond Athabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Prime Minister brought in his first spending bill. After 10 years of this Liberal government, I thought it was impossible to somehow be worse than Justin Trudeau, but this is worse. The Prime Minister inherited an obese Liberal government and promised to spend less. And yet here there is 8% more in spending than what Justin Trudeau did during his last year. Without a budget, how can the Prime Minister explain this to his colleague, who's the former Minister of Finance of Quebec? How can he explain that we will be managing Canada without a budget? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation, Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is true that we received a strong mandate to make government more efficient, for example, by using new technology and by reducing dependence on external consultants. That's what we're doing and will continue to do, Mr. Speaker. We will also ensure that the public service has the expertise and tools it needs in order to accomplish its mission. But I will also mention that, for example, in the estimates, there is funding for dental care, among other things, which millions of people in the ridings of my colleagues on the other side of the House depend on. My colleagues said they would support this during the campaign, but now they say they won't, and it's really regrettable and shameful that they'll be taking away dental care for millions of people, their own constituents. The honourable member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me just say that we are not going to take budget lessons from the other side of the House. Spending will increase about 3 times faster than inflation and demographic growth. That's a $500 million level without a single budget. $500 billion rather, without a budget. When my colleagues go meet families, single moms, entrepreneurs, all sorts of people who manage to make budgets and who are struggling to make ends meet, how can people like that accept this kind of spending without a budget? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'd like to thank my constituents, but it is amazing to see the Conservative selective amnesia, because just a month ago they were unable to put out a costed budget, even though they had been a costed platform, rather, even though they'd been asking for an election for years. They had plenty of time to prepare, but then they produced a platform that wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. What would my colleague tell his constituents when he's going to vote against the dental care plan, which recently was opened up to people between 18 and 64, which will open up dental care to millions of Canadians? He should be ashamed to vote against that.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Secretary of State for Rural Development. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I had the opportunity.
Sorry, couldn't hear the member. Would the member like to start over? I still can't hear the member. So.
State for Rural Development. And it is indeed a very serious issue. I'd ask my Conservative friends to calm down a little bit. You know, we have very serious wildfires that are taking place in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Victims of this fire, Mr. Speaker, are having to be evacuated from rural communities in our prairies by the thousands. This is a very serious issue. I want to compliment the efforts of the firefighters and the first responders for doing a fantastic job. Can the Secretary of State explain what it is the federal government is doing?
The Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is a very serious matter. And I was home in Saskatchewan this weekend, and I met with the Premier. We had a very good press conference. I met with Métis Indigenous leaders. I met with local leaders, and I met with a lot of different groups, including the evacuees that are struggling with this during this very challenging time. I want to say that many of my constituents were forced to flee their homes, and certainly our prayers are sent out to them. But I'll say quickly that the federal government is ready to assist. Mr. Speaker, we'll be there for Saskatchewan, we'll be there for Manitoba, we'll be there for all of Canada.
The honourable member for Foothill.
members that met Foothills families who are in tears because they're losing their jobs and they're losing their businesses because of the Liberal attacks on Canadian energy. These are small business owners who employ hundreds of thousands of Canadians right across this country. They need real action, no more political games. Like the provinces, they want to build because pipelines mean paychecks, mean a growing economy, and energy independence. So why are the Liberals the only holdout? The Prime Minister is meeting with premiers in Saskatchewan today. Will he approve a pipeline at that meeting?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is indeed meeting the 13 provincial and territorial leaders today with one clear goal: to support nation-building projects that bring Canadians together by ensuring that they are expedited but also efficiently reviewed. As the Prime Minister said, any project will need to get consensus from provinces, Indigenous communities and private partners and will be subject to assessment, but Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has also been clear: it's time to build in Canada, and build is what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
Well, the Prime Minister may be meeting, but he sure isn't listening. While he dawdles, the opportunities to unleash Canadian energy pass us by because of the Liberals' anti-energy legislation that blocks infrastructure and blocks investment. Like the provinces, they want to build. Canadian workers want to work. Canadians want energy independence, but C-69 blocks pipelines, 48 blocks shipping. The job-killing carbon tax, or the industrial carbon tax, is punishing our energy sector. Will the Prime Minister end his attacks on Canadian oil and gas and repeal his anti-energy legislation today?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we were served another reminder just this weekend of the threats that we face in terms of trade around the world. This government will fight, protect, and build. This Prime Minister is in Saskatoon today with 13 provincial and territorial leaders to build one Canadian economy, not 13. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we intend to build this country. We intend to build major national projects in this country, and we intend to put Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, and Canadian workers to work building the country that we live in.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
The Prime Minister is meeting with provinces in Saskatoon today. The consensus is clear as the call to build pipelines and energy infrastructure becomes louder and louder. The only one standing in the way is the federal Liberal government. Building energy projects means a stronger Canadian economy, less dependence on the United States, and powerful paychecks for Canadian workers. Will the Liberal government approve a pipeline at the meeting in Saskatchewan today?
Yeah. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been very, very clear, and I don't know if my friends across the aisle have heard it quite clearly. Certainly Canadians heard it in the last federal election when they returned a Liberal government with a very, very clear mandate. That is to fight for this country, fight against trade threats from other places, protect the citizens of this country, protect, yes, our natural resources, protect our workers, but also, Mr. Speaker, to build this country, to build major national projects. That's what's on the agenda today in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Northwest.
Mr. Speaker, we hear a lot of rhetoric from this Liberal government about making Canada an energy superpower, but their commitment to job-killing anti-Canadian energy legislation holds back our potential as a nation. The actions needed today are to repeal the no new pipeline C-69, repeal the shipping ban C-48, repeal the job-killing oil and gas production cap, repeal the industrial carbon tax. So will this Liberal government take action today, the action needed to repeal their anti-energy agenda?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how we can be much more clear. The Prime Minister convened the 13 provincial and territorial leaders today with the express purpose of discussing with them the kind of major national nation-building projects that this country can consider undertaking. That is what is going on in Saskatoon. I don't know if the members across actually follow the news or followed the election campaign, but what happened is we said it's time to build, Mr. Speaker, and build is what we're going to do.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is meeting the provinces in Saskatchewan today. And we're hearing a clear consensus. We're hearing calls to build pipelines and energy infrastructure. There are more and more of these calls. Quebecers want pipelines, and the only obstacle in their way is the federal government. If we build energy projects, we'll be strengthening our Canadian economy, reducing our dependence on the U.S., and we'll be making sure that our Canadian workers can bring home good paychecks. So, will the Liberal government approve the building of a new Canadian pipeline today at the meeting? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is indeed in Saskatoon today. And what is being discussed there? Yes, energy. Yes, big national energy projects. Yes, the complete elimination of interprovincial trade barriers and make just one federal economy, or one pan-Canadian economy rather, in order to increase our GDP by 4% according to some economists. And so we will be making sure to create good jobs, investment in Quebec, elsewhere in Canada, and Mr. Speaker, we will be building Canada. That's what we're here to do. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, throughout the campaign, the Prime Minister said that he had a plan to build new energy projects. So what better time than today to present his plan to all of the Canadian premiers together and explain how he will be building that energy infrastructure. People in my riding in Quebec and in Canada are all sick and tired of paying more for less. Will the Liberal government spare a thought for our rural regions and abolish Bill C-69, the anti-energy bill? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, I know the member is new to this House. I don't know if he's following the news. But the Prime Minister is in Saskatoon, and he's working closely with all of the provinces and territories. And what are they talking about? Energy projects, as well as others, that will make Canada an economic superpower on the global stage. Our mandate is to build Canada strong. That is the mandate we got through the election campaign. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, the very first call I received from a Calgarian was from a small business owner being extorted by criminals for $300,000. Extortions in Calgary, Brampton, and Edmonton are on the rise and only getting worse. Under these Liberal extortion cases are up 357%. Liberals voted down Conservative Bill C-381 to tackle extortion. The bill sets mandatory minimum penalties for extortion after Liberals took away penalties in their soft-on-crime bill C-5. Will the Prime Minister work with Conservatives to adopt Bill C-381 to crack down on violent extortions?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is a serious crime and we're taking it seriously. Extortion carries a penalty of life in prison in Canada, Mr. Speaker. That is extremely serious. If committed with a firearm, there's minimum sentences as well. We'll act decisively to strengthen the criminal code and move aggressively to protect victims by making bail laws stricter as well, Mr. Speaker, for violent organized criminals. And we'll work closely with the RCMP and local police across the country. We created a task force. There's more work to do. We're investigating these serious issues, and I hope the criminal...
The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray.
Failed Liberal drug policies flooding the streets with dangerous drugs, causing crime and chaos in our street, are making the addiction crisis worse. Every day, 22 Canadians die from drug overdose. During the last Liberal decade, we've seen more people die from addiction than we lost in the Second World War. We've heard heartbreaking stories of young people becoming addicted to drugs labeled as safe, only to later lose their life to addiction. Conservatives want to see investment in treatment and recovery. Simple question. Will the Prime Minister reverse course and put an end to the deadly, unsafe supply program today?
L'Honorable Ministre de la Santé.
Merci, Monsieur the Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Well, Mr. Speaker, as you know, this situation affects Canadians, and my department and I are closely considering the question. and we will be looking for solutions. Thank you.
Member for Fort McMurray.
Fentanyl is 100 times more potent than heroin, and as little as 2 milligrams can kill a person. Through the lost Liberal decade, Canada has become a fentanyl manufacturing hub, with Breaking Bad-style super labs popping up across the country. Mass fentanyl production is mass murder. But Liberal laws let these monsters who traffic the deadly drugs walk free. Conservatives are proposing mandatory life sentences to those involved with trafficking, production, distribution of more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl. Will the Prime Minister take real action and give life sentences to the drug kingpins committing mass murder?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, fentanyl has impacted every single community in North America. And I know that we see the impacts of fentanyl and its use have killed so many young people. That's why we listed 7 cartels as terrorist entities under the criminal code. I'm working closely with Kevin Brasseau, Canada's fentanyl czar, at home and abroad, to put a laser-sharp focus on dismantling fentanyl rings. We will put those who profit from this drug behind bars, Mr. Speaker. We will always be there to protect Canadians.
Honorable Deputy.
The Honourable Member for Madawaska-Rescubush. Mr. Speaker, Francophone immigration plays an essential role in strengthening minority Francophone communities throughout the country. It's also important for supporting economic growth, and that's why I'm proud to say that we have set ambitious goals for the years to come: 8.5% for 2025, 9.5% for 2026, and 10% for 2027. Can the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship tell us about what the government is doing to support Francophone immigration? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his question and his hard work on Francophone immigration. Last year, we exceeded our Francophone immigration target for Francophone immigration outside Quebec, and we are determined to support the strength and long-term growth of Francophone communities outside Quebec. That's why our new government will establish a 12% objective for Francophone immigration outside Quebec by 2029. Thank you.
Excellent. Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just handed the keys to his government to Marc-Andre Blanchard, Trudeau's UN ambassador and now his chief of staff. This is the guy who wants to invest in killing oil and gas and do it.
Would the member like to rewind a bit and to... Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just handed the keys to the government to Mr. Blanchard, Trudeau's UN ambassador, now his chief of staff. This is the guy who wants to invest in killing in oil and gas. Where are the claps? And do it through Brookfield. Right. Who else worked at Brookfield? Anyone? Well, there was the Prime Minister himself. Why is the Prime Minister surrounding his government with Trudeau loyalists who want to shut down Canada's energy sector? And is that why he still refuses to publicly disclose his Brookfield assets?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, we welcome the appointment of a new Chief of Staff in the Office of the Prime Minister. Mr. Blanchard is a great public servant, a great Canadian who has had a stellar career in the private and the public sectors, and we welcome back to public service. And as for the Prime Minister, he follows, as all members must, the most stringent code of ethics for elected members in the world, and the Prime Minister will obviously continue to comply with all of the rules.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Not just the energy sector under threat, it's public safety too. While the Prime Minister's new Chief of Staff is hell-bent on shutting down oil and gas, he's also brought back David Lametti as Principal Secretary, the same failed Justice Minister.
member can start from the top on that.
Laughing incompetence, the same minister that they fired. This is the same minister who gutted bail and pushed soft on crime bills like Bill C-5 and C-75 that they all voted for. Laws that helped unleash chaos on our streets, drive violent crime up 50%. Is the Prime Minister really doubling down on the same Trudeau insiders who always put criminals over that of community safety?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
There seems to be a very odd fixation on the personnel decisions in the Prime Minister's office. The obvious accountability is done in this House, as the member well knows, and he can ask any question that he wants to any minister of this House without impugning people that aren't here. But Mr. Lametti, for his part, a great former parliamentarian, a great Italian-Canadian, a distinguished person who is entering public service. These people should be celebrating that great Canadians are prepared to step up and enroll for public service and serve Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Signal Hill.
The Prime Minister yesterday announced his new Chief of Staff and Principal Secretary. These are two of the top officials, some of the most powerful people in Ottawa, directing policy. The new Chief of Staff wants to kill oil and gas and says it needs to be done through Brookfield. David Lametti was Trudeau's Justice Minister, oversaw our broken bail system, and kept C-5 and C-75 laws on the books. Why is the Prime Minister surrounding himself with Trudeau officials that want to keep oil and gas in the ground and keep soft on crime laws on the books?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I do not understand this odd fixation with personnel decisions. What we have in this House is a number of public servants who are quite willing to answer questions about the public policies of this government and to be held accountable for those. We obviously celebrate when distinguished, capable and talented people join the Government of Canada. That is certainly the case, as we heard over the weekend, but I suggest that members move on to asking about the issues that Canadians are concerned about.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Confederation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the face of repeated threats by the United States to our economic sovereignty, Canadians chose to give our government a strong mandate to build a strong Canada. Now, as we've heard, today the Prime Minister and Premiers are meeting in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, one of the economic engines of this great country, and strengthening Canada's economy is on the agenda. Now, members opposite have imagined a lot of outcomes from a meeting they weren't invited to. But in an effort to get back to facts, can the Minister of Finance and National Revenue inform the House on details of this work and its importance to Canada?
L'Honorable Ministre des Finances et du Revenu National.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Calgary Confederation and welcome him to this House and thank him for the excellent work he's doing for people of Calgary, but also of Alberta, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, the First Minister's meeting is happening today in Saskatoon is an important opportunity for the Prime Minister to bring the premiers together around the table with one common agenda, Mr. Speaker, focusing on building a stronger and united Canada. It's time to build one Canadian economy, accelerate the approval of nation-building projects. Mr. Speaker, together we're going to build Canada strong. That's what we're doing.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South, Innisfil.
For 7 months, parliamentary committees have sat idle while, according to the Prime Minister, the country is facing an existential threat, and it appears that he's in no rush to have them constituted. Committees are an important function of our democracy. Committees are where bills are scrutinized, where witnesses tell MPs about the impacts these bills and threats are having on their businesses, their lives, and their communities, where the government is held to account. We don't have a budget, and without committees, there will be no oversight or accountability. Maybe that's what the Prime Minister wants. Will the Prime Minister commit to ensuring committees are in place before his summer vacation starts?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I've taken careful note, and of course, standing committees will be constituted in this House, as they always are. But I wonder where that member was last fall when this party spent 3 straight months refusing to hear one single government proposal with respect to improving the lives of Canadians, with respect to improving our environment, with respect to moving forward on that project. Where was that member? He should be ashamed of asking that question.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, for 20 months, the Netanyahu regime has been mercilessly bombing Palestinians in Gaza. 54,000 are dead, including 15,000 children. Hundreds of thousands of people have been wounded. Hunger used as a weapon of war. Hospitals have been bombed. Families have burned alive. Once humanity said never again, but today it's happening again under our very eyes. The Prime Minister stood with France and the UK to say that if this didn't stop, he would not remain idle. On behalf of all of the children that have been murdered and mutilated in Gaza, will the Liberals prepare sanctions against Netanyahu and his cabinet?
The Honourable Secretary of State for International Development.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is deeply concerned by the renewed escalation in Gaza. These attacks put the lives of countless civilians in danger. We urge both parties to remain committed to ceasefires, save the preventable loss of countless lives. Essentials, foods, electricity, fuel, and medical supplies must never be used as political tools. We call for the immediate and unimpeded flow into the Strip and for the release of all remaining hostages. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that does it for today's question period. Give members a couple of seconds to go where they may be going. We go straight to routine proceedings. Thank you. Affaires courantes ordinaires. Dépôt de documents.
Daily routine of business, tabling of documents.
No, nothing? Okay. Dépôt de...
Introduction of government bills.
No.
Statements by ministers.
Rapport de délégation.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
Presenting reports from committees. Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions.
I'm just hovering in case you want to...
Presenting petitions. The honourable member for, is it Calgary Centre?
I rise today to present a petition on behalf of Canadians that are lamenting the fact that this government's going to go through right into the summer holidays, their holidays, without presenting a budget to Canadians about how they're spending their hard-earned tax dollars. Now, this is the first time this has actually happened in Canadian history, especially with a legacy government.
Point of order from the honourable member.
Speaker, this is obviously not a petition. It's more of a member statement that he is making. If he's presenting a petition, he should be talking about the essence of the petition only.
The honourable member can proceed, but obviously focused on a petition. Could the member,
Mr. Speaker, without being
sorry, could the member start over? I was speaking to somebody. Could the member start over, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present a petition on behalf of Canadians that are lamenting the fact that there is no budget going into this summer holiday the government plans to take without presenting to Canadians how they're actually going to be spending their hard tax-earned dollars. Now, they talk about the first time this being in Canadian history where a legacy government has not presented the spring budget and is going to put it off until the fall. They talk about the actual position we're going to, and the creation of uncertainty that and the lack of public trust that actually comes in this. Therefore, they call for the federal government to immediately table a budget and extend the House sittings so we can actually get some clarity on what this government's spending money on beyond the $60 billion plus that they presented in their policies during the election. I tabled this on behalf of Canadians across the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Presenting petitions, the honourable member for Vancouver East.
Chair, Mr. Speaker, I rise to table a petition on behalf of Vancouver East constituents who took part in the peace train journey to Ottawa to promote a culture of peace and resist the culture of war. They noted that Canada is a signatory of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Canada's adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples further reflects our commitment to the principles of justice, equality, and freedom. They noted that these principles are essential to peace, to prevent conflict and war, and for Canada's own security and stability. They noted that lack of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms is a chief underlying cause of violent conflict. In the face of ever-increasing violent wars, nuclear threat, climate disruption, and humanitarian crisis, the signatories call upon the House of Commons in Parliament assembled to establish and fund a Centre of Excellence for Peace and Justice focused on research, education, and training in conflict resolution, diplomacy, and peace operations for Canadian civilians, police, military personnel, and the international community.
Presenting petitions, the Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Speaker, I'm also tabling a petition on behalf of the peace trainers from my riding from Parksville, Denman Island, Courtenay, and Port Alberni and Banfield. And Mr. Speaker, I'll add to it that the petitioners cite that the lack of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms is the underlying cause of violent conflict. They highlight that an open society and an informed public and Parliament is essential for the understanding of complex issues of violent conflict and for the achieving of lasting peace and disarmament. And with the closing of the Pearson Peace Centre, Canada lost an important civilian-led, independent institutional structure that supported effective research policy and training in peace operations and conflict resolution. So they're calling, Mr. Speaker, on the House of Commons to establish and fund a Centre of Excellence for Peace and Justice focused on research, education, and training in conflict resolution, diplomacy, and peace operations for Canadian civilians, police, military personnel, and the international community. Thank you.
Presenting of petitions, the Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Petitioners call upon this House to consider the urgent crisis in the collapsing numbers of the population of southern resident killer whales. They've been identified as an endangered population under the Canada Species at Risk Act. There have been numerous programs and promises put in place, but the southern resident killer whale population continues to lack adequate protection and would be far better protected when they swim across the border and are in the waters of Washington state, where the rules are more rigid, where the regulations are enforced immediately, and when boaters and large marine craft are aware that they can be fined and ticketed as opposed to ignored when they violate whale protections on our side of the border. The petitioners urgently ask the Minister of Transportation to impose mandatory vessel distance regulations, just as is the case south of the border in Washington state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Presenting petitions? No. Questions on the order paper?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, I would like to congratulate you for your election to the speakership. And
that all questions be allowed to stand.
Okay. I wish to inform the House that I have received notice of a request for an emergency debate. I invite the honourable member for Winnipeg Centre to rise and make a brief intervention.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to request an emergency debate regarding the devastating wildfires currently impacting Manitoba and surrounding regions. As of last week, more than 17,000 people have been forced in Manitoba to evacuate their homes in northern Manitoba, many from remote and northern First Nation communities. Thick smoke from these fires has spread across the country and into the United States, creating serious public health concerns. Both Manitoba and Saskatchewan have declared states of emergency and are now appealing for international assistance. Yet Canada's emergency response system is once again failing those most in need, particularly Indigenous communities. The response has been slow, bureaucratic, and disconnected from the realities on the ground. First Nations leadership and evacuees are sounding the alarm. The system is broken and the people are paying the price. In a country like Canada, no community should be left behind during a climate disaster. It is our duty as parliamentarians to act. Therefore, I respectfully request an emergency debate to deliberate immediate actions to protect affected communities and ensure a just and effective response to this worsening crisis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the honourable member for Winnipeg Centre for her intervention. I am prepared to grant an emergency debate concerning wildfires in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. This debate will be held tomorrow at the ordinary hour of daily adjournment.
I wish to inform the House that the volume of the earpieces will now be reset. Thank you.
Orders of the day.
Orders of the day, resuming debate on the address and reply to the speech from the throne and on the amendment as amended of Mr. Scheer.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River, has 3 minutes and 30 seconds left to answer questions.
He's not here.
The honourable member is not here.
So we'll go on to Quebec Centre.
So we'll go now to the honourable member for Quebec Centre, Quebec Centre.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My apologies because my voice is a bit weak today, but it's always a good moment to speak on behalf of my constituents. And first, I'd like to say I'll be sharing my time with the member, my very dear colleague, the member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. And I'm rising, obviously, today to express my pride and recognition to the electors of Quebec Centre, who on last April supported me for a consecutive term, allowing me to work with them in a positive and constructive manner. So I'd like to thank them for their confidence, and I'm looking forward to continue representing them here in the House and in Quebec. I'd like to say that the Quebec Centre riding is the most beautiful in our country, but I know other members say that their ridings are also the most beautiful. So I'll say that it's perhaps the second most beautiful in Canada, and I'll leave my citizens to decide the order. But people are proud, they show solidarity, they're diverse, and they're aware of the diversification that we've seen in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. So I'd obviously like to thank my family for its unstinting support in recent years, and we all in this House know how important family support is to be able to do our jobs properly. Marie-Chantal, Etienne, Clémence, Antoine, Jade, our daughter-in-law and her 2 children, and our 2 grandchildren, thank you. Their silent strength gives me energy and vision that I need to do this job with integrity. And I also think of my parents, who I owe everything to. They have been present in my life and continue to be so. And I also like to thank the volunteers in my riding of Quebec Centre, who really led a positive campaign, a very present one, close to our community. They woke up early for several weeks in a row to knock on doors and make calls and put up posters. I remember the first evening there was a strong wind, but they were still there. They were there to allow our democracy to be embodied. And I'm also thinking about the other people who ran in my riding of Quebec Centre, Simon Bérubé, Tony Bureau, Patrick Kerr, Daniel Buisson. These are people who, with their volunteers, also put their heart into their jobs to embody our democracy. We did have passionate and enlightened discussions, always with respect. So thank you for your commitment and your sincere devotion to the citizens of Quebec Centre. And I'd also finally like to thank my team, my riding office team in Quebec Centre, Maya, Courrier, and Fatima, Agnev, Steve, and Nelson, who every day do positive politics that is really close to people's hearts, and that's why they are so well known. And I look forward to working with them over the next few years to underscore the importance of these policies that are close to the people in our community. And such solidarity and resilience has been really tested over the past few years through the pandemic, with the wars across the planet, rising cost of living, and most recently economic tensions globally and geopolitical tensions throughout the world. So the throne speech in this respect creates a path for a more lasting and prosperous and fairer future, one that is aligned with this government's desire to build a strong Canada where no one's left behind. The plan is clear, and we have to support families, young people, and seniors against this challenging economic backdrop. We need to build more housing that's low cost and defend the interests and values in Canada against the backdrop of insecurity. We have to make Canada the most, with the strongest economy in the G7, one that is greener and respects the environment and health of Canadians more fully, with good quality jobs that are well paid and diverse, both in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. We also have to look at reconciliation with Indigenous peoples while respecting their rights. In my writing, these priorities aren't just theory, they are concrete. We hear them resonate when we talk about them in businesses and schools, at Montcalm Senior Centre, with the families at community organizations, at Cap Blanc, where there are committed citizens, and it is these voices that I bring here today to the chamber. Mr. Speaker, I'm particularly encouraged by the Canadian government's clear commitment to housing. We are going to accelerate social housing construction and support cooperative housing and transformations of public property. We want to ensure that all Quebecers and all Canadians and every person, regardless of how much they earn, or can be housed with dignity. The plan that we are putting forward not only plans to build more houses, but to build them better and faster at less cost. I'd also like to underscore, Mr. Speaker, the historical agreement that we signed almost 2 years ago with the Quebec government. And this will allow us right now, as we speak, to build roughly 10,000 affordable housing units. And this is the biggest housing agreement in the country. And it's the biggest investment in the Quebec government, supported by the federal government, in the history of the province with respect to social housing. It is a very clear demonstration of how governments, when they work together, it's to the benefit of all Quebecers. And in the throne speech, the Canadian government also promised to invest in structural nation-building projects, and there are many involving Quebec and the greater Quebec City region. It would allow us to tighten links between Canada and the rest of the world and create well-paying jobs for generations to come. So starting with the transportation network in Quebec. There'll be a tramway to make sure that Quebec won't only be a city of this size without a modern transit network. And Quebec City is the national city of Quebec. So we really need this project, which will create tens of thousands of jobs, and it could fast-track the construction of roughly 15,000 houses around this network, with public and private investment of up to $50,000 per family in Quebec City. So a high-frequency train link between Quebec and Toronto, and additional investment in the Davie shipbuilding site, which is the biggest and includes a new national shipbuilding strategy, and the Quebec Bridge, which is a true engineering highlight, and we want to restore it and highlight it after decades of frustration from people in my riding. And finally, I'd like to talk about the dental program. We need to mention this Canadian program that will help 15,000 seniors in my riding. They're already benefiting from it. And 2.3 million seniors across the country are as well, and another 4 million that are now eligible since May of 2025. We all have the responsibility and to promote it in coming weeks. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, well, I really am lucky to represent my riding, and I also am as fortunate as other members of this House. Regardless of our political stripes, we can really focus on the major priorities of the Canadian government.
On a commentary, the honourable member for Barrie South Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if I'm not mistaken, the honourable member was at one point the president of the Treasury Board. Of course,